Doctor Who Season by Season. Season 1 Review. The very first season of Doctor Who famously began airing on the 23rd of November 1963 and ran into mid-1964, with a total of 42 episodes. Yes, you read that, 42 episodes. And Stephen Moffat couldn't even manage to do 13 episodes per year for 4 years of his run. It starred William Hartnell as the first Doctor, as well as Carol Ann Ford as his granddaughter Susan, and William Russell and Jacqueline Hill as school teachers and unwilling companions Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright. William Hartnell is one of my top 3 favorite Doctors and is absolutely sensational throughout this season. Likewise, William Russell and Jacqueline Hill are 2 of my all-time favorite companions as Ian and Babs, and Ian is up there with the Brig as my favorite male companion. William Russell sells every scene he's in, and Ian is a 60s school teacher who's such a complete and total badass that he makes Jack Bauer look like an absolute pussy. This guy has balls of steel, seriously. But then, what do you expect with a name as cool as that? Sadly, I can't wax as lyrical about Carol Ann Ford. She's not terrible, and much of the issues with her character are as much down to the writing as they are any fault of the actress, but Susan is definitely the weak link out of the original crew and can't half come across as a whiny little brat sometimes. Doctor Who is said to have been created by Sidney Newman, and indeed he came up with many of the ideas and the basic outline for the central characters, but the truth is that the resultant series was much of a committee creation with the likes of C.E. Webber, script editor David Whittaker, producer Verity Lambert and even Anthony Coburn, the writer of the very first story, all having an important part to play in the overall conception of the show. Doctor Who effectively has no Chris Carter, J.K. Rowling or George Lucas figure, and thank fuck for that I say. Indeed, it was actually Anthony Coburn who decided to make Susan the Doctor's granddaughter, and why did he do this? Because he thought that it might otherwise seem a bit dodgy and inappropriate for a teenage girl to be traveling with an old man without that familiar relationship. The fact that this was then used as an excuse by the new series to have the otherwise depicted for half a century as completely asexual Doctor running around panting after young women and even another teenage girl in the shape of Rose Tyler is some serious fucking chutzpah. That's all I'm saying. Season 1 begins with an unearthly child. This first story has a somewhat mixed reception from within fandom, or rather episodes 2 to 4 do. Episode 1 is pretty much soundly loved by every Doctor Who fan ever, because how could you not and actually call yourself a fan with a straight face? It's the caveman story that takes up episodes 2 to 4 that many fans find a bit dull, but to tell you the truth, I've always rather liked it. It's grimy and dirty, and none of the regulars are having a lot of fun in this dangerous, barbaric environment, giving the series more realism in 3 episodes than the new series has done in 11 years. The next story is The Daleks. This of course is the story that turned Doctor Who from a moderately successful Saturday tea time show into a national phenomenon and sent ratings through the roof. And quite rightly too. The Daleks is much more than the introduction of the series' most famous monsters, or a historical footnote. Even 53 years on, it remains a remarkable piece of television that positively drips with tension and atmosphere and maintains interest throughout nearly 3 hours of screen time. A remarkable feat given that most new Who episodes have me nodding off within about 10 minutes these days. Well, I say these days. That's when I can even be bothered to try to watch them in the first place. But I digress. The Daleks is fucking awesome and the show's first genuine bona fide classic. Next up is The Edge of Destruction, a peculiar little 2-parter whose primary function is to get the characters to warm to each other and become friends on their travels, as opposed to the wary strangers they effectively still are in the first 2 stories. It achieves this goal, but is a rather odd way of getting there, and although the first episode is pretty good, the resolution is more than a little daft and certainly anticlimactic. Next up is Marco Polo. This is a 7-part historical epic that sadly does not exist in the BBC archives. Yes folks, In case you weren't aware, literally over 100 episodes from innumerable stories of 60s Doctor Who are missing. A few have been found over the years, most recently all the Patrick Troughton story The Enemy of the World and most of the Web of Fear in 2013, but there still remains an enormous gap in the series, and sadly Marco Polo is the first casualty, with not even one freaking episode still remaining. Fortunately the soundtracks, i.e. the audio of the story, and indeed of all the missing episodes, does still exist, thanks largely to 60s Who fans who, devoid of video recorders back in the day, still used tape recorders so they could at least re-listen to their favorite stories even if they couldn't rewatch them. Say thank you to these enterprising sons of bitches, because while you can't watch the real thing, it does at least mean you can either just listen to the audio version, watch telesnap reconstructions, many of which are on YouTube, or in some cases watch actual animations of the episodes set to the original audio. Which is what I did with Marco Polo via the Who Recons animations, which are on YouTube, earlier this year. And I have to say, based on this evidence, it is an absolute fucking crying shame that Marco Polo is missing, because it seriously rocks hard. Even in animated form, it is clear that the writing and performances of this story are absolutely first class and so far ahead of the churned out amateur hour shite New Who vomits out at us with depressing regularity that it is frankly unbelievable. Marco Polo is first-class drama, and we can only hope that all or even some of the real thing will turn up someday. Next up is the Keys of Marinus, and all I can say is why the fuck couldn't this be missing instead of Marco Polo? Yes folks, Keys is the first Doctor Who turkey. I've never been able to make it past the first 2 or 3 episodes, to be honest. It is just so damn boring that it has a sort of sleeping pill kind of effect on me. It's cheap, it's nasty, it's stupid, and it's really dull. Next. Well, next is the Aztecs, which is happily much better. The Aztecs is a decent story which, although I reckon is not quite in the same league as Marco Polo, both being written by John Lucarotti, is nonetheless another quality production with strong writing and performances. Ian gets to show what a complete badass he is by throwing an experienced Aztec warrior off a fucking pyramid. You do not get more badass than that, folks. Next up is the Censor Rights, which sadly is another turkey. This one has all the same faults as Marinus, though to be fair it does have a reasonable first episode with a really peculiar and sinister cliffhanger, but goes rapidly downhill after that. It's just so boring. It's rather unfortunate that, with the sole exception of the Daleks, the real sci-fi stories of Season 1 rather pale in comparison with the historical ones. The season finale is the Reign of Terror, another historical yarn which plants the Doctor and company in the middle of the French Revolution. Reign of Terror does not live up to the standards of Marco Polo or the Aztecs, and to be honest I actually prefer the cavemen parts of An Unearthly Child too. But it's still not bad. It's a little bit dull but well made and acted throughout. This one also has a couple of missing episodes but is available on official BBC DVD with those missing episodes fully animated to the original audio. I don't mind Reign, like I said, it gets a bit dull on occasion but never to the point of terminal boredom, and it's infinitely preferable to Marinus or Sensories. All in all, the very first season of Doctor Who ever made gets the show off to a pretty rocking start. It's not my favorite season of Doctor Who, my favorite season of the 60s, or even my favorite Hartnell season, but it's still pretty darn good. I give season 1 a very healthy B+.